My first destination after leaving Athens was Loutra Elenis. And Loutra Elenis is a small coastal resort town just off of the continental mainland. And I stayed there for two main reasons. One, it was in really great proximity to all of the cities and sites that I wanted to visit, like 15 to 20 minutes from Corinthos, ancient Corinthos, the Corinthian Canal, and it also put me in really good proximity to the sites that I wanted to visit on my way to Nafplio when I intended on leaving in a couple of days. But I also stayed in Loutra Elenis because the weather was really nice, and I managed to find a really great resort for a really great price. And I mean like 20 euros a night, great price, that was actually located on the beachfront, which meant that it gave me the opportunity to spend a little bit of time in the water, which I did. The best part of all is that the hotel itself, which is called Hotel Sea View, actually gives every room in the hotel a sea view. My balcony literally faced the water, and it gave me a beautiful panorama of this little, almost bay that the hotel and the coastal city rests upon. While I enjoyed my hotel and the city itself, it isn't anything particularly special. And so if you're not looking to spend some time at the beach, or if you're not traveling during the off season and happen to find, accommodation at what is probably like a lower price than what you would find in other bigger cities in the Northeast, I think that you can skip Loutra Elenis, to be completely honest. Corinthos is a small city on the Gulf of Corinthos, and it is very much a summer destination. It has a really long beach, Galamia Beach, as well as a really lovely boardwalk that unfortunately was largely shut down when I visited at the very end of October, or was it the very beginning of November? Somewhere around there. And so it's really tough to gauge the vibe of the city, given that I went during the off season, and given that Corinthos is a summer sort of resort town, from what I could tell. The one thing that is worth visiting if you decide to visit Corinthos is the epic Pegasus statue that is on the waterfront and is really unmissable. But besides the Pegasus statue, I would say that if you don't really have a lot of time for a stopover, I think it's okay for you to skip the city. And unless you're going during the summer, and again, similar to Loutra Elenis, if you want to spend time at the beach, if you are going like I did during the off season, I wouldn't recommend spending the night in Corinthos. Ancient Corinthos is different than the city of Corinthos. Ancient Corinthos is composed of both a small town as well as the large archaeological site, whereas Corinthos, the city, is about 10 or 12 minutes away by car, and is actually located closer to the Corinthian Canal. Ancient Corinthos is quite large, and there is a lot to see there. Is it worth visiting? I think that depends. If you're not planning on visiting any other sort of ancient sites, and if you are someone that perhaps has like a very specific interest in ancient Greek history, then yes, of course, you should see it. It is home to the Pyrene, which is the fountain where Pegasus allegedly, used to thirst his quench. And so that little piece of mythology, of course, is a big draw. But unlike some of the other larger complexes that I visited that had, a famous site like the Epidavros Theater or the Temple of Apollo in Delphi, the Parthenon in the Acropolis, the large complex in Corinthos, although an important piece of the ancient world, it doesn't have that oomph and that grandeur that some of the other sites that I saw had. So I think that if you are visiting some other sites, and especially if you're on a bit of a time crunch, I think that, ancient Corinthos is okay to actually skip, in part because it just lacks that grandeur and that historical importance that some of these other ancient complexes sort of have. The Corinthian Canal, on the other hand, is a must-see. The canal's length and depth is really impressive, and although there are a number of places that you can stop to see the canal, the most common one is from the main bridge, which is about 10 minutes away from Corinthos and is actually closer to the very small town of Isthmia, which is just on the northeastern tip of the peninsula. There isn't much of a schedule to the Corinthian Canal, so when you're there, I would say try to hang around to see if a boat will pass through. I didn't get to see a cruise ship pass through, which would have been really, really exciting to see. You've probably seen all these pictures of like these cruise ships that have like an inch on each side and are somehow making it through this tight waterway. But I did get to see a boat, and I actually thought it was really, really, really cool. So maybe hang around there, grab a coffee, take some cool pictures, and wait to see if a large size or large-ish size vessel will make its way through. I really enjoyed it, and I would recommend stopping over there and doing the same. While you're visiting the canal, you may want to think about going to visit a city that is actually just off of the Peloponnesian Peninsula called Loutraki, which is different than Loutra Elenis, by the way. Loutraki, similar to Loutra Elenis, is a coastal kind of like resort town with, a large beach, but it's actually bigger than Loutra Eleni. It's actually a small city, so it's kind of like Corinthos and Loutra Elenis, mashed together. I really liked the couple of hours that I spent there walking the waterfront and the town. Is it anything special or unique? No. So again, if like Corinthos or Loutra Elenis, if you don't have a lot of time, I think it's a city that you can probably skip. But if you do have time and you are looking to kind of take in some resort vibes, or if you're looking to spend maybe a night or a day or two at a beach, enjoying the nice weather, depending on when you go, Loutraki was great. And also, like, by the way, I found that there were like a large number of gays on Grindr as well. So like, I don't know if this is like a pseudo like crypto gay like destination, and I mean crypto as in like on the down low, not like Bitcoin or Ethereum. But I was really surprised with the large number of people that I found within proximity in the city. So I don't know if that's an additional draw for you. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. Just thought it would be something fun to mention. Similar to Corinthos, ancient Epidavros also has a new city as well as an ancient archaeological site that is separated by around a 15-minute car drive from each other. Interesting to note, the city of Epidavros also has an ancient theater, but albeit a much smaller, dare I say, miniature version of the grand epic one that you will find in the ancient archaeological site. The smaller theater used to belong to royalty and was used to put on private shows. And so what you're actually going to see is more of a home theater, which I thought was just really fun to look at. Had I not made the mistake of mistaking the miniature theater in Epidavros for the main grand epic theater in ancient Epidavros, I probably wouldn't have visited the city of Epidavros. But I'm actually pretty happy that I did. Is it anything unique or special? No. That being said, I did get some really beautiful pictures and views from the top of the mountain range as I was making my way down towards the city, which is located primarily along the water. And I also enjoyed a really lovely lunch at a restaurant with a beautiful garden patio. So I think it really depends on the kind of trip that you're doing. If you are doing a small sort of trip just outside of Athens for a couple of days, sure, why not? But if you're doing a much more extended road trip, it's not that there's anything wrong with the city. It's just that there are other areas that I think you can dedicate your time to. But again, that all depends on the amount of time that you have. If you have an extended amount of time, why not visit the city, sit down, have lunch, get some beautiful pictures and also see the mini theater. But if you are on a tighter timeline, you can probably skip the city and go straight to the ancient archaeological site itself. Now, ancient Epidavros, on the other hand, is something that you cannot miss. The theater is so grand, so sublime, so majestic and imposing. It is probably one of the top 10 sites and experiences that still, resonate with me months after leaving Greece. It is part of a larger archaeological complex that, does have some other important sites as well, but the theater is really, the main draw. And the best part of the theater is that you can not only walk into the theater, but you can walk up the steps to the very top. You can sit down and rest and take in the view. And in fact, the theater itself is actually still used to this day to put on live events. So if you are going to be doing a road trip that is a bit more scheduled, unlike mine that was a bit more haphazard, you might actually be able to do a visit to ancient Epidavros at a time when they are putting on a live show or a live play, a live music event. There are shows that happen there on a continual basis. There's a lot that I could say about the Epidavros Theater, but a lot of it would be, descriptive. Go there, see it for yourself, and instead of me telling you about it, I'm going to show you what it is that you're going to see by playing you a video that I took when I was at the very top of the theater myself. Ancient Epidavros was the final stop in my first burst of touring that I did after leaving Athens, which saw me visit, I think, 7 or 8 cities and destinations in the span of 2 days, which honestly was a lot, right? There was one day where I think I did Corinthos, the city, ancient Corinthos, the archaeological site, the Corinthian Canal, Loutraki, and then driving all the way back to Loutra Elenis. So a lot of driving, a lot of, an hour here, an hour there. But luckily in my next destination, in my next stop in Nafplio, I actually spent 2 nights there. So I gave myself and my body a bit of a rest, which was very needed. With that said, Nafplio is so beautiful, and there's so much to see and do in this small city that more so, I would say, than even Epidavros, Nafplio is a cannot miss destination. And in fact, one of the biggest regrets that I had on my entire trip was that I only spent 2 nights in Nafplio instead of 3. Now, granted, because the day that I arrived was taken up mostly by my time spent in Epidavros and ancient Epidavros, the first day that I had there really wasn't a full day. By the time I got to my hotel and checked in and got settled and then made my way into the city proper, I really only had a few hours to explore the city before the sun set at around 6 p.m. So a third day would have been great because it would have allowed me to have spent a little more time in the city and not cram in all of the things that there are to see and do in one full day. Nafplio runs along the base of 2 large mountains, both of which you can walk or drive up, and I highly recommend that you make your way up to the top of both of these mountains, which I did in the same day and was, epically exhausting, but glad that I pushed myself to do it. The city has an old center that surprisingly is actually organized along a grid pattern, so it's pretty easy to navigate, and it's also not that big. There are a number of restaurants and shops and cafes and bars, and I say have at. There is such a great selection of things to eat and great shopping as well. So do be sure that you take advantage of that while you're visiting the city center. The city center sort of leads into a waterfront promenade that is lined again with restaurants and bars. And sitting on the patio of these restaurants and bars gives you a really beautiful waterfront view of the promenade and, of course, the surrounding pier and mountain range. And off of the waterfront promenade, there are a couple of smaller piers, but there's one main one that kind of jettisons outward into, I guess what you can call a bit of a bay. And it brings you into close proximity to this little tiny island that hosts a little tiny castle that you can actually visit by boat. Now, when I went, unfortunately, I didn't get a chance to visit the island because I visited during the off season. And during the off season, the boat doesn't run as frequently. And I think the day that I was there was the day that the schedule literally switched over from like October 31st to like November 1st. I think I arrived on October 31st, but then the day after when I had time to actually do touring was November 1st, and then the schedule changed on that day, but it also happened to be, I think, a Sunday. So the Greek gods decided that it was not my time to visit the island. But if you do a little more advanced planning, you can go onto the city's website to check out the schedule, and it seems like it's one of the top things to do. I didn't get to do it, but I would love to do it, and I will when I go back to visit. Perched on top of the most easterly mountain is Fortress Balamidi, which is an absolute must-see. You can access the fortress either with a car, which will bring you pretty much to the top of the mountain, or you can walk up using the fortress's stairs that run along the mountain side. And of course, I took the stairs, and I would recommend to anyone who can and wants to that they also take the stairs as well. The stairs can be accessed from Polizoidi Street or from March 25th Avenue. It doesn't matter which way you enter because the stairs end up merging with each other. So it doesn't matter which entrance you take, you're going to end up on the one set of steps that take you up the fortress walkway to the fortress's main entrance. At the top of the mountain, you will see some breathtaking, epic, spectacular views. You will get full panoramas of the city center, of the other adjacent sort of mountain, of the greater Nafplio area, as well as the beach and the promenade that hugs the adjoining mountain, and just the mountain range and the water that encircles this really, really, really beautiful city. I spent a few hours up there because I struggled to justify leaving and denying myself this Epicurean sort of feast. Of course I did, because even though I was visiting in the very beginning of November, it was still pretty sunny and it was still pretty hot. I think the day that I walked up the steps, it was 27 degrees. So similar to the Acropolis, be sure that you bring extra water. If you think you have enough water, bring more. If you have a UV umbrella, protective clothing, sunscreen, hat, all of that good stuff, make sure that you are equipped to do the walk up, especially if you are doing the walk up, but to also spend an hour or two walking around somewhere that, again, doesn't have any areas to hide from. There's no real shady areas to sort of get a reprieve from the sun, so you're gonna have to provide that shade yourself. Located in between the two mountains is a little beach, Paralia Arvanetias, and even though the 27-28 degree weather wasn't the funnest thing to have to manage when you are walking up and down those steps and walking around, a mountaintop and a large sort of fortress complex, it was great beach weather. And I kind of planned for this in the morning when I saw what the weather was going to be by the afternoon. And so I brought a bathing suit with me. And so when I made my way down from the fortress, I just went straight to the beach, because at that point it was around 12 o'clock noon. It had hit, the peak sun and kind of peak heat of the day. And the beach was just beautiful. It's not a sandy beach, it's a rocky, almost Dolomite-y beach, but the exquisite pleasure and the visual sumptuous feast of just sitting on this beach, on a towel, looking at this beautiful water, and especially just the other side of the mountain range, the copper and brown juxtaposed to like the blue sky, the blue water, the green foliage of the cacti and the aloe. It was just such a treat. Even if I didn't go into the water, which I did, I would have been very happy to just sit on the beach and take in the view. I did go into the water, as I said, and the water's temperature was absolute perfection. Cool but not cold, warm-ish but not actually warm. It was refreshing. It was cleansing. One thing that I did notice, however, at this beach is that there were some hungry fishies that really enjoyed nibbling on my feet when I sort of kept my legs still. I didn't really go all that deep into the water. I just kind of stayed just along the shore. And so when I just kind of sat there and let my feet and my body just kind of rest, I would say within 30 seconds, there would be a little fishy there just taking little nibbles, little nibbles, on my toes. Not that it was particularly painful, but it was just that sort of like feeling of something out of nowhere that just, wasn't great and wasn't conducive to, full relaxation. But hey, there's, I guess, a price to pay. There's a price that comes with, being able to be at this lovely destination. So just be mindful of that. If that's something that you're worried about, again, just something to think about. I guess I could have been more proactive and brought like water shoes with me. And if that's something that, you're planning on doing, I would maybe recommend that you bring some water shoes with you, especially since the beach itself is kind of rocky. But I love the beach and I will absolutely go back, fishies or not. Even after all of this, I did manage to make my way up the second mountain in the same day, in part because I had to, because again, I only had one full day in Nafplio. But I did it in the evening closer to sundown, because I ended up going back to my hotel to shower, to wipe off, the salt water, and to take a bit of a nap and just, give myself a bit of a break from the sun. So I did manage to make my way up the second mountain, which afforded me some really, really beautiful views of this coastal gem, at dusk in the evening. And it was a really lovely way to bring an end to my visit to Nafplio. I absolutely love Nafplio. I would live there if I could. I would buy property and move there if I could. But who am I kidding? I can't afford property anywhere, so that's not going to happen. But I will definitely visit the city again. And before I move on to the next video, I actually want to give a shout out to the hotel that I stayed at, Hotel Vasilis. It has really great reviews on Booking.com, Expedia, Google. The hotel, I think, cost maybe 40 euros a night, so very budget friendly. It's located outside of the main city center, up the mountain a bit, so it is a bit of a walk from the city center, and the drive is quite uphill, especially the last little part when you're going at almost like a 45 or 50 degree angle. But that aside, the hotel owner was so lovely. It's a family run business. I think the grandmother largely manages the property, sorry, I should say. But I did see, like, I think her son and her grandkids sort of there. So I just love that family vibe. The view from my balcony, again, was spectacular. I got a view of the mountain and the entire city. I love spending mornings there, having my coffee, evenings there, having a drink, and just taking in the view from a private place. It was quiet. Because I was driving, it had ample free parking. And the room was gigantic. I mean, huge. I mean, the room would have cost like $1 million in somewhere like Toronto or Vancouver to buy. So, it's a great price, great location, great views, and great staff. I really enjoyed my stay there, and I highly recommend that especially if you have a car and you're looking for a place that has great parking, but even if you don't and you don't mind being outside of the city center, definitely consider this hotel, because I really enjoyed my stay and I would stay there, and I will stay there again when I visit Nafplio.